The congressional hearing room smelled like old wood and older lies. Sergeant Major Jack Steele sat rigid in the witness chair, his weathered hands folded on the table before him. 60 years of living showed in every line of his face. 32 years of Delta Force showed in the way he held himself, even now, even here, under the hot lights and cold scrutiny of men who had never heard a shot fired in anger. The senator leaned forward, expensive suit creasing at the elbows. Sergeant Major Steele, you're asking this committee to believe that a 19-year-old girl single-handedly neutralized a coordinated terrorist assault on Fort Bragg. Steele didn't blink, didn't flinch. His voice came out gravel rough, shaped by 1,000 briefings in 100 war zones. No, sir. I'm telling you we were too damned blind to see the war being fought right in front of us. The senator's pen stopped moving. Someone in the gallery coughed. The court reporter's fingers hovered over her keyboard. Explain. Steele looked past the senator, past the mahogany panels and the American flag hanging limp in the corner. He saw snow, heard gunfire, tasted the copper fear of men who thought they knew everything about combat until combat taught them different. It started 7 days ago, sir. 7 days that changed everything I thought I knew about war, about duty, about what it means to be a soldier. The senator settled back in his chair. Then tell us, Sergeant Major, from the beginning. Steele closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he wasn't in Washington anymore. He was back at Fort Bragg, back where it all began. 7 days earlier, the North Carolina winter hit harder than it had any right to. The kind of cold that got inside your bones and made old injuries ache with fresh memory. Steele stood in the thin morning light outside the Delta Force compound, watching his breath turn to frost in the air. Behind him, the low buildings of the Special Operations Training Facility crouched against the pale sky like predators waiting. He'd been doing this for 3 decades, training the best to be better, turning good soldiers into great ones, turning great ones into ghosts who moved through enemy territory like smoke through a graveyard. But something felt different about this morning. Lieutenant Ryan Tanner jogged up, young and hard and hungry the way all the good ones were at 29. 3 tour in Afghanistan, 47 confirmed kills, a chest full of medals and a head full of certainty that he knew exactly how the world worked. Morning, Sergeant Major. New batch coming in today. Steele nodded, not trusting his voice yet. The coffee hadn't kicked in and his knee was acting up again. Fallujah, 2004. A long time ago, but the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. How many? Tanner asked. 8, all volunteers, all past preliminary selection. Any worth a damn? Steele pulled the roster from his jacket, scanned the names he'd already memorized. 7 of them he knew: combat veterans, Rangers, SEALs, 1 Force Recon Marine who'd lost half his team in Helmand and came back meaner for it. Then there was the 8th name. There's one you should know about, Steele said carefully. Tanner raised an eyebrow. Behind him, Sergeant Jake Donovan and Captain Eric Bradford emerged from the operations building, moving with that casual readiness that marked men who'd seen too much and survived it anyway. Donovan, 31, built like a tank, explosives expert who could disarm a roadside bomb with steady hands while mortar rounds fell around him. Bradford, 35, intelligence specialist, 3 tour in Iraq, the kind of quiet professional who noticed everything and said little. What about him? Tanner asked. Steele looked at the name again. Heard. The word hung in the cold air like a challenge. Donovan stopped mid-stride. Bradford's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Her, Tanner repeated, not quite a question, not quite a statement. Harper Quinn, 19 years old, 5'5". Background check says she grew up in foster care after her mother died. Tested off the charts on the psychological evaluations. Perfect scores on the written exams. And the physical tests, Bradford asked quietly. Steele folded the roster and put it away. She passed barely, but she passed. Tanner laughed short and sharp. Jesus, they're that desperate for numbers. 19-year-old girls playing soldier. She volunteered, Steele said, same as you did once. I was 22, and I'd already done a tour in Kandahar. She's here, that's all that matters. We test her like we test everyone else. But even as he said it, Steele felt the lie in it. They wouldn't test her like everyone else. They'd test her harder, push her further, find her breaking point faster, because that's what you did with the ones who didn't fit. You broke them quick and sent them home before they got someone killed downrange. It was practical, it was necessary. It was what he'd been doing for 32 years. The transport truck arrived at 0800, diesel engine coughing in the cold. 7 men climbed out, moving with that particular swagger that came from knowing you were among the elite of the elite. They'd all been through hell to get here. They'd all earned the right to that swagger. Then she stepped down from the tailgate. Steele watched from the admin building window, coffee growing cold in his hand. Harper Quinn looked like someone's daughter playing dress-up in her older brother's uniform. The BDU pants pooled around her boots. The jacket hung loose on narrow shoulders. She had her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, but strands had already escaped to frame a face that belonged on a college campus, not a kill house. She stood apart from the others, not looking at them, not looking away, just standing, waiting. Tanner appeared at Steele's shoulder. That's her. That's her. She looks about 16. Personnel file says 19. Birth certificate verified. Birth certificate, Tanner snorted. Give her 48 hours, she'll quit, they always do. Steele said nothing. He was watching the way she held herself. Most new recruits, first day, they either puffed up trying to look bigger than they were, or they hunched down trying to disappear. Fight or flight, written in body language. Harper Quinn did neither. She just stood there, loose and centered, like she was waiting for a bus. Like this was nothing special. Like walking into the most elite special operations training program in the United States military was just another Tuesday morning. Something about that bothered him. Let's go introduce ourselves, Steele said. Outside, the wind had picked up, carrying the smell of pine trees and firing ranges. The 7 male recruits had already clustered together, that instant brotherhood that forms when men recognize their own kind. Warriors, survivors, the ones who came back when others didn't. Steele approached with Tanner, Donovan, and Bradford flanking him. The recruits snapped to attention, all except Harper, who came to attention a half-second later like she'd had to remember how. Another mark against her. Steele walked the line, making eye contact with each recruit, reading them. 32 years had taught him to see the ones who'd make it and the ones who wouldn't. The Marine from Helmand, he'd make it. The SEAL who carried himself like coiled wire, he'd make it. The Ranger who looked at everything like he was already calculating angles and distances, he'd make it. Then he reached Harper Quinn. Her eyes were green, light green like sun through leaves. They met his without challenge, without submission, just met them and held. Recruit Quinn. Sergeant Major. Her voice was steady, no tremor, no bravado, just acknowledgement. Why are you here? To become an operator, Sergeant Major. You know what that means? Yes, Sergeant Major. Tell me. For the first time, something flickered in those green eyes. Not fear, not anger, something else. Something Steele couldn't quite name. It means being willing to go where others can't, do what others won't, and come home when others don't. Tanner made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. Donovan shifted his weight. Bradford watched, silent and evaluating. Steele held her gaze for 3 more seconds, then moved on. Behind him, he heard Tanner's voice, pitched low but meant to be heard. 48 hours, mark it. The first test was the obstacle course. 1.5 miles of walls, ropes, mud pits, and barbed wire. Standard time for a Delta operator was under 8 minutes. Acceptable time for a new recruit was anything under 10. The 7 male recruits went first, moving through the course with varying degrees of skill and determination. The Marine posted 7 minutes 40. The SEAL hit 7:20. The Ranger clocked 8:15 but moved with such efficiency that Steele made a mental note to watch him. Then it was Harper's turn. She stood at the starting line, looking small against the obstacles that towered ahead. Steele checked his stopwatch. Beside him, Tanner crossed his arms. "This should be educational," the lieutenant muttered. Steele clicked the timer. She ran. The first obstacle was a 10-foot wall. Most recruits hit it running, used momentum to scramble up and over. Harper slowed, measured her approach, jumped, caught the top edge, pulled herself up with arms that looked too thin to manage the weight. She teetered at the top, almost fell, caught herself, dropped down the other side. Already behind schedule. The rope climb came next. 30 feet of braided hemp, arms only. Harper grabbed it, started climbing, made it 15 feet before her grip slipped. She slid down, landed hard, got up, tried again. This time she made it to the top, but her arms shook visibly as she rang the bell. Time bleeding away with every second. The mud pit waited like an open wound in the earth. Barbed wire strung 18 inches above black water that smelled like rot and old rain. Harper dropped to her stomach, started crawling, got tangled in the wire, stopped, worked herself free with movements that looked clumsy, inefficient. But she kept moving. Tanner glanced at his watch, then at Steele. 9 minutes already. She's not going to make it. Steele said nothing. He was watching her face. She'd surfaced from the mud pit looking like a creature from a swamp, face streaked black, uniform soaked and heavy, but her expression hadn't changed. Still that same neutral focus. No frustration, no desperation. Like she was somewhere else entirely. The final obstacle was a rope traverse. 40 feet across open space, nothing but arm strength and will between you and a 12-foot drop. Most recruits powered across, hand over hand, racing the clock. Harper pulled herself onto the starting platform, grabbed the rope, swung out. Made it 10 feet before her grip failed. She fell, landed wrong. Steele saw her ankle twist, saw her face go tight with pain. The timer read 9 minutes, 47 seconds. She got up, limped back to the platform, grabbed the rope again, swung out. This time she made it 20 feet before falling. 10 minutes, 16 seconds. She got up again. "Time," Tanner called. "You're done, Quinn, hit the showers." She didn't look at him, climbed back onto the platform. Third time. Her hands were bleeding now. Steele could see the red on the rope. Her ankle was swelling inside her boot. She swung out, made it 30 feet, 35, 40. Rang the bell on the far side. Dropped to the ground and stood there, swaying slightly, covered in mud and blood and the kind of stubborn determination that either made operators or got people killed. The timer read 11 minutes, 3 seconds. Fail by any standard. Tanner walked over to her, voice carrying across the training ground. 11 minutes, Quinn. That's pathetic. I've seen Boy Scouts move faster. You want to quit now or you want us to keep embarrassing you? She looked at him, mud dripped from her chin. I didn't hear a bell, Lieutenant. Something dangerous flashed in Tanner's eyes. What did you say? The timer. It rings a bell when time's up. I didn't hear it. Bradford made a sound like a suppressed laugh. Donovan studied the ground. Steele watched the tableau unfold with the feeling that he was missing something, that there was a pattern here he should be seeing but wasn't. Tanner stepped closer. Listen real careful, recruit. You failed. You're too slow, too weak, and too damn stubborn to know when you're beat. This isn't some college ROTC program. This is Delta Force selection, the best of the best, and you're nowhere close. Harper said nothing, just stood there, bleeding and muddy and unreadable. Tanner turned away. Get cleaned up. You've got rifle qualification in 2 hours. Try not to shoot yourself. That night, Steele reviewed the day's footage in his office. The obstacle course ran on a continuous loop, grainy black and white surveillance capturing every fall, every struggle. He watched it 3 times before he saw it. The pattern. Every time Harper fell, she fell in a specific way. When she got tangled in the wire, it was always on the left side. When she climbed the rope, her slip points were consistent, almost mechanical. And that final traverse, the one where she'd made it across on the 3rd try, her hand placements were exactly the same each time. Like she was rehearsing. Like she was mapping. But mapping what? The course wasn't going to change. Everyone ran the same obstacles. What could she possibly gain from deliberate failure? Steele rewound the footage one more time, watched her face as she lay in the mud under the barbed wire, saw her eyes tracking something off camera, following the angle of the surveillance cameras themselves. A cold understanding began to settle in his gut. She wasn't testing the course. She was testing the surveillance. Finding the blind spots. The knock on his door made him close the laptop faster than he'd intended. Come. Bradford entered, moving with that economy of motion that marked him as intelligence. He'd been a case officer before he'd been a shooter, and sometimes Steele forgot which role the man inhabited more comfortably. Sir, the recruit files. There's something you should see. Quinn's file. Bradford raised an eyebrow. How did you know? Because nothing else would bring you here at 2200 hours. What did you find? Bradford set a manila folder on the desk, opened it to reveal a birth certificate, service records, background check. Everything checks out on the surface. Harper Quinn, born Fort Campbell, Kentucky, 19 years ago. Mother Elena Quinn, killed in action in Syria, 2015. Father unknown. Raised in foster care by a retired general named Marcus Hale. I know all this. What doesn't check? Bradford pulled out another document, a photograph, grainy and washed out, taken from long range. This was in Elena Quinn's classified personnel file. Took some digging to find it. It's from Operation Silent Knife, Syria, 2015. Steele looked at the photo. Showed a woman in tactical gear, face partially obscured by a scarf and the shadow of a helmet. She was in a sniper position, rifle braced, looking through a scope. That's the mother. That's Phantom 1, Elena Quinn's operational call sign. She was one of the best long-range specialists we ever had. 183 confirmed kills before she died holding a position so 73 civilians could evacuate. Steele studied the photograph. Something about the eyes, even in the grainy black and white. And this matters why. Bradford pulled out a second photo, recent, high-resolution, Harper Quinn's official ID photo. Set the two pictures side by side. The eyes were identical. Jesus, Steele breathed. That's not all. I pulled the training records for the past 6 months. Harper Quinn applied to Delta selection 4 times, first time at age 16, second at 17, twice more at 18, all rejected due to age restrictions. So she's persistent. Sir, most recruits wash out after one rejection. They move on, join another unit, find another path. She applied 4 times knowing she'd be rejected, like she was waiting for something. Waiting for what? Bradford was quiet for a moment. Permission, maybe, or the right time, or for someone to be watching who would recognize what she was. Steele closed the folder. You think she's something other than what her file says. I think her file is exactly what someone wanted us to see, and I think we should be asking who that someone is. After Bradford left, Steele sat in the darkness of his office for a long time. Outside, the base had gone quiet. Just the distant sound of a helicopter on night maneuvers, the low hum of generators, the wind through the pines. He thought about the obstacle course, the careful falls, the mapping eyes. He thought about a woman named Phantom One, who died holding off an army so civilians could live. He thought about green eyes that met his without fear or submission. And he thought about what Bradford had said. Waiting for someone to be watching. The rifle qualification started at 0600 the next morning. The range sat on the north edge of the base, backing up against thick forest that stretched for miles. Good for noise discipline, good for concealment, good for testing shooters in realistic conditions. Harper Quinn arrived early, moving with that slight limp from yesterday's twisted ankle. She'd requisitioned a standard-issue M4 carbine from the armory, checked it out with proper protocol, signed the forms in neat, precise handwriting. Now she stood at the cleaning station, field stripping the weapon with movements that looked uncertain, almost clumsy. She fumbled the bolt carrier, dropped a spring, spent 30 seconds searching for it in the gravel. Tanner watched with barely concealed contempt. You know how to clean that weapon, recruit? Yes, Lieutenant. Doesn't look like it. She said nothing, found the spring, reassembled the rifle slowly, checking and rechecking each component. Steele observed from the tower, binoculars bringing everything into sharp focus. Something about her movements bothered him. They were clumsy, yes, but consistently clumsy, like someone pretending not to know how to dance while hitting every step perfectly. The other recruits gathered on the firing line. Standard qualification course. 10 rounds at 300 meters. Acceptable grouping was 8 inches. Passing score was 7 out of 10 in the circle. The Marine went first, solid shooting, 8 rounds in the black, respectable. The SEAL was better, 9 rounds clustered tight, 1 flyer that still caught the edge. The Ranger put all 10 through a 6-inch group that made Donovan whistle low and impressed. Then Harper stepped to the line. Tanner handed her the loaded magazine. 300 meters, recruit. Think you can hit the target from here? She took the magazine, seated it, charged the weapon, settled into a prone position that looked adequate but not exceptional. Her breathing was too fast, her grip too tight. Everything about her posture screamed amateur. Send it when ready, Steele's voice came over the range speaker. She fired. The first round kicked up dirt 3 feet left of the target. The second went high, way high. By the 5th round, she hadn't touched paper. The other recruits were watching now, some with amusement, some with second-hand embarrassment. Tanner stood with his arms crossed, shaking his head. Harper fired the last 5 rounds, 2 more complete misses, 3 that clipped the very edge of the target board, nowhere near center. 0 qualifying hits. Complete failure. Tanner walked over, took the rifle from her hands. Outstanding performance, Quinn. Really showing us that killer instinct. Hell, I don't think you could hit the broadside of a barn from inside the barn. She said nothing. You're done, pack your gear. There's a transport back to basic training leaving at 1400. You can tell them you gave it your best shot, literally. Harper stood, dusted off her uniform, started to walk away. That's when Steele noticed him. The range officer, Master Sergeant Cole Williams, 20 years running this range, seen every kind of shooter from naturals to hopeless cases. He was standing at the spotting scope, frowning at something. Steele keyed his radio. "Williams, what are you seeing?" "Sir, could you come down here a second?" Steele descended from the tower, feeling his knee protest every step, reached the firing line where Williams waited, still peering through the scope. "What is it?" Williams pointed at the target. "Those misses, sir, they're bothering me." "Why? Recruit can't shoot, happens." "Yes, sir, but look at the pattern." Steele looked through the scope, saw the target at 300 meters, saw the 2 edge hits Harper had managed, saw the impact points in the dirt where her other rounds had gone, and saw what Williams had seen. Every miss was exactly 3 feet left of center. Every single one. Not scattered, not random, mathematically precise. Like she'd been aiming at something else entirely. "Wind was gusting left to right," Williams said quietly. 8 to 10 knots variable. To miss that consistently in the same direction, you'd have to be deliberately calculating the wind and then compensating wrong. Why would anyone do that? Williams looked at him. "Data collection, sir. Testing the wind at this range. Learning the environmental conditions. You don't do that unless you're planning to come back and use the information." Steele stared at the target for a long moment. "She threw the test." "Yes, sir. And she did it so perfectly that she had to be a very good shooter pretending to be a very bad one." Steele turned to find Harper Quinn, but she'd already disappeared into the barracks. He looked at the target again, at the precise misses, at the evidence of skill hidden inside apparent failure. Bradford's words came back to him. Waiting for someone to be watching. The night watch assignment came down at 1800 hours. Harper Quinn drew the worst shift, 0200 to 0400, the coldest part of the night, the deadest hours, the time when even hardened operators struggled to stay alert. Tanner delivered the news with barely suppressed satisfaction. "Consider it a learning experience, Quinn. Get some trigger time on that rifle you can't seem to shoot. Maybe the targets will get closer in the dark." She took the assignment without comment, collected her cold weather gear, her radio, her weapon, walked to the guard tower on the north perimeter like she was walking to her own execution. Steele watched her go from the operations center. "You're really going to put her out there?" Donovan asked. "After that ankle in this cold?" She drew the rotation same as anyone else. "She's half frozen already. Another 4 hours in that tower she'll be hypothermic. Then she'll learn to prepare properly." But Steele didn't believe his own words. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong since the moment she stepped off that transport truck. He just couldn't see it yet. Couldn't see the pattern. At 0217, Harper's voice crackled over the radio. Calm, precise, no hint of the cold that must have been eating through her bones. Tower 6 to base. I have movement. Tree line Sector 7. Multiple contacts approximately 300 meters. Tanner was on command duty. His voice came back irritated and thick with interrupted sleep. Negative Tower 6. Likely wildlife. Maintain position. Base thermal signatures inconsistent with wildlife. Count 9 hostiles, human-sized, tactical spacing, moving with discipline. Quinn, do not waste our time with false alarms. You're seeing things. Stay on post and stay off the radio unless it's an actual emergency. Steele had been half dozing in the ready room. Those words brought him fully awake. He'd heard that tone before, not in Harper's voice, but in voices like it. The clinical detachment of someone calling a fire mission. The absolute certainty of someone who knew exactly what they were seeing. He grabbed his radio. Tower 6, this is Steele. Describe the movement pattern. A pause, then her voice still steady, still calm. Bounding Overwatch, Sergeant Major. Lead elements advance, rear elements provide cover. 15-second intervals. Professional discipline. These are not civilians or animals. The cold in Steele's gut had nothing to do with the temperature. Hold position, I'm coming to you. He grabbed his jacket, his weapon, his thermal optic, ran for the tower. His knee screamed protest, but he ignored it. Behind him, he heard Donovan and Bradford scrambling to follow. The tower was a simple wooden structure, 12 feet high, with a small enclosed platform that provided minimal protection from the elements. Harper stood at the rail, scanning the tree line through a standard-issue night vision scope. She didn't turn when Steele climbed up beside her. Sergeant Major. Show me. She handed him the scope, pointed. Tree line Sector 7. They've moved since I called it in. Now at 250 meters, still advancing. Steele looked. Saw nothing but darkness and trees. Switched to his thermal optic. And there they were. 9 heat signatures. Human. Moving with the kind of coordination that came from training and experience. Advancing on the base using terrain and spacing that spoke of military discipline. Jesus Christ. He keyed his radio, emergency frequency. Base actual, this is Steele. Real-world contact. Multiple hostiles approaching north perimeter. Initiate Alpha protocol. This is not a drill. Tanner's voice came back, sleep replaced by sharp awareness. Confirm real world. Confirmed, get everyone up, full alert now. Harper hadn't moved, still watching through her scope, still calm. Steele looked at her. How long have you been tracking them? 17 minutes, Sergeant Major. Why didn't you call it in sooner? For the first time, something flickered across her face. Not fear, not uncertainty. Sadness maybe, or resignation. I did, Sergeant Major. Lieutenant Tanner told me I was seeing things. Before Steele could respond, the first explosion lit up the night. The fuel depot went up in a ball of orange flame that turned night to day and threw shadows 100 feet long. The concussion wave hit 2 seconds later, rattling the tower, making Harper grab the rail for balance. Then the armory exploded. Then the motor pool. Precision strikes, coordinated, timed to create maximum chaos and minimum response capability. This wasn't a probe, this was a full-scale assault. Steele's radio erupted with voices, Tanner calling for support, Donovan reporting hostiles breaching the east fence, Bradford trying to get a headcount of personnel. Through it all, Harper Quinn stood silent and still, watching the base burn. Steele grabbed her shoulder. Get down from here, get to the bunker now. She looked at him, those green eyes reflecting firelight. Negative, Sergeant Major. That wasn't a suggestion, recruit. That was an order. With respect, sir, I have the high ground. I have clear line of sight, and I can provide fire support. You're a recruit who failed rifle qualification. You'll get yourself killed. Permission to prove otherwise, Sergeant Major. More explosions. Automatic weapons fire now coming from multiple directions. Screams. The particular sound of men dying. Steele made a decision he'd spend the rest of his life questioning. Do not engage unless you have clear identification of hostile intent. Do you understand? Yes, Sergeant Major. And Quinn, if you fire on friendly forces, I will court-martial you myself. Understood. He started down the ladder, stopped halfway. Where's your rifle? She reached behind her, pulled out a weapon Steele hadn't seen her carrying. Not the standard M4, something else. Something with a longer barrel and a scope that looked military but not issue. A .338 Lapua Magnum, custom built, match grade. Where the hell did you get that? She didn't answer, just settled into a firing position, natural and practiced, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Like a completely different person. The last thing Steele saw before he dropped to the ground was Harper Quinn chambering around with movements that were no longer clumsy, no longer uncertain. Movements that were liquid smooth, professional, deadly. And he understood with sudden terrible clarity that every stumble, every failure, every moment of apparent weakness had been theater. A ghost playing at being human. Waiting for the monsters to show themselves. The next 12 minutes redefined everything Steele thought he knew about combat. He'd been in firefights from Mogadishu to Kandahar. He'd seen SEAL teams operate. He'd watched Delta operators move through kill houses like water through cracks. He thought he'd seen the best the military could produce. He was wrong. The first shot came from the tower. A single suppressed crack, barely audible over the chaos. 600 meters away, a hostile who'd been lining up on Tanner's position dropped like a puppet with cut strings. 3 seconds later, another shot, another drop. The enemy scattered, diving for cover, returning fire toward empty positions. They were shooting at ghosts while the real threat sat invisible in a wooden tower, picking them apart with surgical precision. Steele fought his way toward the TOC, Bradford covering his 6. Around them the base had become a maze of fire and shadow. Hostiles everywhere, professional, coordinated, too many. Then the radio in his ear, Harper's voice, still calm, still detached. Sergeant Major, hostile team moving on your 6, 3 contacts, behind the admin building. Steele spun, saw nothing. I don't have visual. Trust me. The words hung there, trust me, from a recruit who'd lied about everything from the moment she arrived. He trusted her. Moved left, pulled Bradford with him. 5 seconds later, 3 hostiles rounded the admin building right where they would have been. Another shot from the tower. The lead hostile went down. Bradford took the second. Steele put 3 rounds into the third. Clear, Steele breathed. 9 more hostiles converging on the TOC, Harper's voice. Recommend you hold position. I have the angle. Steele crouched behind a concrete barrier, watched. 9 suppressed shots in rapid succession. A rhythm like a heartbeat. Each one finding its target across distances that should have been impossible in darkness, in chaos, in conditions that would challenge Olympic shooters. 9 hostiles down. 0 misses. Tanner's voice on the radio. ragged with adrenaline and disbelief. "Who the hell is shooting? We've got a guardian angel out here." Steele looked at the tower, saw the brief muzzle flash of another shot, heard the corresponding impact 300 meters away. "Not an angel, Lieutenant." The assault broke at 0236, 19 minutes after it began. The surviving hostiles retreated into the forest, their coordination shattered, their numerical advantage meaningless against a threat they couldn't see, couldn't fight, couldn't survive. 3 American casualties, all wounded, none fatal. 14 hostile bodies scattered across the compound. 0 penetration of critical infrastructure beyond the initial strikes. Steele found her in the tower. She'd already disassembled the rifle, cleaned it, stowed it in a case that looked custom-made. Now she sat with her back against the rail, writing in a small notebook, filling out the watch log like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just saved every life on this base. He climbed up, sat across from her. Neither spoke for a long moment. Finally, Steele found his voice. "What the hell was that, Quinn?" She looked up from her paperwork, those green eyes unreadable. "I observed threats, Sergeant Major. I neutralized threats, per rules of engagement." "That shooting, that was professional grade, that was world class." "I qualified expert marksman in basic training." "Bullshit. Expert marksmen can't make those shots. I've seen SEAL snipers who couldn't make those shots." She went back to her paperwork. "Is there a problem with my performance, Sergeant Major?" Yeah, there's a problem. The problem is you've been lying since the moment you got here. The falls, the failures, the rifle qualification, all of it was an act." "I don't know what you mean." "Who are you really?" She set down her pen, met his eyes. "I'm recruit Harper Quinn. I'm here to become an operator. That's all you need to know." "The hell it is. I want answers now." "Then you should talk to Colonel Reeves, Sergeant Major. He'll explain everything." The way she said it, like she knew exactly what would happen next, like this had all been choreographed. Like she'd been waiting for this moment. Tanner burst through the tower door, face flushed, weapon still hot. "Steele, Colonel wants to see you. Now both of you." He looked at Harper like he was seeing a stranger. Which Steele realized he was. They all were. The walk to Reeves' office felt like a death march. The base was chaos, medics working on the wounded, firefighters battling the blazes, security teams sweeping for remaining threats. And through it all, word was spreading. Someone had single-handedly broken the assault. Someone had dropped 14 hostiles with 14 shots. Someone had turned what should have been a massacre into a minor inconvenience. The whispers followed them like smoke. "Who was it? Who's that good?" Steele didn't answer. Neither did Harper. She walked beside him, limping slightly on that twisted ankle, looking small and young and utterly unremarkable. Looking exactly like what she wanted people to see. Colonel James Reeves sat behind his desk like a man who'd been expecting this conversation. 52 years old. Combat veteran. 3 wars. The kind of commander who'd earned every ribbon on his chest the hard way. He gestured to the chairs. "Sit." They sat. Tanner, Donovan, and Bradford filed in behind, standing at attention. Reeves looked at each of them in turn. His gaze lingered longest on Harper. "Sergeant Major Steele, what I'm about to tell you is classified above top secret. It does not leave this room. If you repeat it, you will spend the rest of your life in a military prison. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." Reeves opened a file, slid it across the desk. The cover read, "Phantom Protocol, EYES only." Harper Quinn doesn't exist. She's a ghost, a legend, a carefully constructed identity designed to fool everyone from the moment she arrived. Steele felt his world tilt. Then who is she? Reeves looked at Harper. Some unspoken communication passed between them. She nodded slightly. She's our deadliest weapon, and for the past 4 days, Sergeant Major, we've been testing you. The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. Testing me. You and your team, to see if you were worthy, to see if you could recognize real talent when it was hiding right in front of you, to see if you'd break her or protect her. Tanner stepped forward, anger bright in his eyes. You used us as bait. You let us think we were training some incompetent recruit while terrorists were planning to hit us. The attack was anticipated, Reeves said calmly. We've been tracking this cell for 6 months. We knew they were coming. We didn't know when, so we set a trap, with Harper as our ace in the hole. And if she'd failed, Donovan asked quietly, if she couldn't make those shots? She doesn't fail, Sergeant, that's the point. Steele stared at the file, at the words Phantom Protocol, at Harper Quinn who sat silent and still like a statue carved from ice. What is she? Reeves leaned back. She's the daughter of the best sniper this country ever produced, trained from childhood, molded, perfected. She's been in deep cover for 3 years, infiltrating extremist networks, gathering intelligence, eliminating high-value targets. She's 19 years old. She's been operational since she was 16. The room went silent. Even Tanner, who always had something to say, had nothing. Bradford found his voice first. Why send her here? Why the charade? Reeves looked at Harper again. This time she spoke. Because there's a mole in this unit. Someone who's been feeding intelligence to hostile networks. Someone who knew this attack was coming and helped coordinate it. Someone who's been selling out American operations for 18 months. The words fell like bombs. Steele looked at his team, at Tanner, who'd served with him for 5 years, at Donovan, who'd saved his life in Fallujah, at Bradford, who'd been his friend longer than he could remember. One of them was a traitor, and Harper Quinn had been sent to find out which one. Reeves stood. You have 48 hours, Sergeant Major. 48 hours before this cell regroups and tries again. 48 hours to find the mole before more Americans die. And you'll do it with her as your asset, because she sees things you don't. She knows things you can't. And whether you like it or not, she's the best chance we have. He looked at each of them. This meeting never happened. You never saw this file. Harper Quinn is still just a recruit who got lucky tonight, and you're going to treat her exactly that way in public. Because if the mole knows we're onto him, he'll run, and we'll never get another chance. Steele felt like he was drowning. And if I refuse? Then people will die, Sergeant Major. Good people, your people. Because you were too proud to accept help from a 19-year-old girl who's better at this job than you'll ever be. The truth of it stung worse than any wound. Reeves gathered the file. Dismissed all of you except you, Recruit Quinn. They filed out into the hallway, into the smoke-tainted night, into a world that had fundamentally changed in the space of a single conversation. Tanner leaned against the wall. This is insane. Agreed, Donovan muttered. Bradford said nothing, just watched the closed door with those analytical eyes. Steele's knee was screaming now. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving only pain and exhaustion and the weight of 32 years of certainty crumbling to dust. We do what the colonel ordered, he said quietly. We find the mole, we use her as an asset, and we keep our mouths shut. And after, Tanner asked, after we find him, then what? Steele had no answer. Inside the office, through the crack in the door, he could hear voices. Reeves and Harper, talking in tones too low to make out words. But he caught fragments, enough to understand. Your mother would be proud. The mission comes first. Trust no one in command. And finally, in Harper's voice, younger somehow, more vulnerable. I'm tired of lying. Steele turned away, started walking toward the barracks. His team followed. Behind them, Fort Bragg burned low and angry against the North Carolina night. And somewhere in that darkness, a ghost waited to hunt. The coffee in the Situation Room had gone cold hours ago. Steele stared at it anyway, watching the surface shimmer under fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying insects. 48 hours. That's what Reeves had given them. 48 hours to find a traitor among brothers, to trust a weapon disguised as a girl, to make sense of a world that had stopped making sense somewhere around 0200, when the first explosion turned night into burning day. He checked his watch. 6 hours gone already, 42 remaining. The door opened. Harper Quinn walked in, moving with that deceptive casualness that Steele now recognized as perfect economy of motion. She'd changed into clean fatigues. Her hair was still damp from the shower. She looked like a college freshman, not a ghost who dropped 14 men without breaking a sweat. She sat across from him, without being invited. Sergeant Major. We need to talk. Yes, sir. Steele pushed the cold coffee aside, leaned forward. 32 years of reading men, of seeing through lies and bravado and fear, all focused on the 19-year-old across the table. Who are you really? And I don't want the official story, I want the truth. She met his eyes, held them. Something shifted in her expression, a curtain pulling back just enough to see the machinery behind it. My name is Harper Quinn, that part's true. My mother was Elena Quinn, call sign Phantom 1, sniper. 183 confirmed kills before she died in Syria holding a position so 73 civilians could evacuate. That part's also true. And the rest? The rest is complicated. Uncomplicated. Harper was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that aged her a decade. I was 9 years old when I watched my mother die, not in person, on a video call. She was in a bombed-out building in Aleppo, bleeding out. The extraction bird was 10 minutes away. She had maybe 5, so she called me, wanted to say goodbye. Steele felt something tighten in his chest. Jesus, kid. She told me 3 things in those last minutes. First, she loved me. Second, the operation she was on had been compromised by someone in command. Someone sold her position to the enemy. Third, I had to finish what she started. Find the traitor. Make sure no one else died because of his greed. You were 9. I was the daughter of Phantom 1. I'd been training since I could walk. She knew what I was, what I could become. So she made me promise. And then she died while I watched. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Somewhere in the building, someone laughed at something. The normal world continuing while they sat in this room, talking about dead mothers and child soldiers and promises made in blood. That's when Hale took you in. General Marcus Hale, he was my mother's handler, the only person she trusted completely. He became my foster father, continued my training, turned me into what you saw tonight. A weapon. Harper flinched, barely, but Steele saw it. An operator, there's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like they took a little girl who just lost her mother and turned her into a killer. They gave me purpose, they gave me skills, they gave me a way to honor her memory. They used you. Fire flashed in those green eyes, real emotion breaking through the professional mask. They saved me. You think I could have gone to some civilian family, pretended to be normal? I'd seen what I'd seen, done what I'd done. There was no going back to normal. So Hale offered me a choice, become a victim or become an operator. I chose operator. Steele sat back, studied her, saw the conviction there hard and bright, but also saw something else, something she maybe didn't recognize herself. Loneliness, deep and old and carefully hidden. How many? How many what, Sergeant Major? How many have you killed? She didn't hesitate. 47 confirmed, all hostile combatants, all verified threats, all within rules of engagement. 47. She was 19 years old and she'd killed 47 people. And you feel nothing about that. Now she hesitated, looked away, looked back. I feel everything about that, every face, every name when I knew it, every person who loved them and will never see them again. I carry all of it, but I also know that every one of those 47 was planning to kill Americans, planning to murder civilians, planning to destroy lives, so I made a choice. Their lives or ours. I chose ours, every time. The simple honesty of it hit harder than any bravado would have. Bradford appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. We've got something. The SCIF, the Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, sat in the basement of the operations building. Concrete walls 3 feet thick, electromagnetic shielding, biometric locks, the kind of room where secrets went to hide. Inside, Tanner and Donovan waited. The tension was thick enough to choke on. 4 men who'd bled together, fought together, trusted each other with their lives. And one of them was a traitor. Bradford pulled up footage on the main screen. I went through every second of security camera data from the past 6 months, looking for patterns, anomalies, anything that didn't fit. The screen showed the base at night, empty walkways, pools of light from security lamps, time stamp read 3 months ago. Watch Sector 7, by the maintenance building. A figure emerged from shadow, moved quickly, purposefully, entered the building, emerged 17 minutes later carrying something small. Who was that? Steele asked. Bradford zoomed in, enhanced the image. The figure's face came into focus. Donovan. The sergeant looked like he'd been gut shot. That's not what it looks like. Then what is it? Tanner demanded. Because it looks like you sneaking around at 0300 carrying classified materials. I was getting gear for the next day's exercise. The regular supply room was locked. The maintenance building doesn't have training gear, Bradford said quietly. It has communications equipment, encryption devices, the kind of things someone might use to contact enemy networks. Donovan's hands clenched into fists. You think I'm the mole, after Fallujah, after everything we've been through? I think the evidence speaks for itself. Evidence can be manipulated. Your intel, you know that better than anyone. Steele raised his hand. Silence fell. Bradford, what else do you have? The captain pulled up more footage. Different dates, different times, always Donovan, always moving in darkness, always alone. 17 instances over 6 months, each time corresponding with operations that were later compromised, ambushes that shouldn't have happened, patrols that walked into prepared positions, intel that somehow made it into enemy hands. Donovan stood. His chair scraped against concrete with a sound like a scream. This is bullshit. I've given everything to this unit. My brother died wearing the flag. You think I'd dishonor his memory by selling out? Your brother's death left you with debts, Bradford continued, relentless. Medical bills from his final months, funeral costs. I pulled your financial records. You're 30,000 in the hole. That's motive. Half the guys on this base have debt. That doesn't make them traitors. Tanner moved between them. Jake, just tell us where you were going. Tell us what you were doing. If it's innocent, prove it. I don't have to prove anything. I know who I am. I know what I've done. And I know that whatever game is being played here, I'm not the one playing it. Harper had been silent through all of this. Now she spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. He's telling the truth. Everyone turned to look at her. How do you know? Bradford asked. Because I've been watching him, all of you, for 4 days. And Sergeant Donovan's patterns are consistent with someone who's grieving, not someone who's hiding. He goes to that building because it's quiet, because he can be alone with his thoughts, because that's where he keeps a photo of his brother hidden in the electrical panel. Donovan's face went white. How did you? I know because I looked, because that's what I do. I see what people hide. And what you're hiding, Sergeant, is pain, not treason. Bradford frowned. Then who? If not Donovan, then who's been feeding intel to the enemy? Harper stood, walked to the screen, studied the footage with eyes that seemed to see beyond the pixels and timestamps. Someone who knew I'd find this evidence. Someone who wanted us looking at Donovan instead of the real mole. Someone who's been playing this game much longer and much better than we realized. She turned to Bradford. When did you pull these files? Yesterday, after I started getting suspicious. And where did you find them? Archive server, standard security camera storage. Show me the metadata. Bradford pulled it up. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. Harper read it like some people read newspapers. These files were accessed 2 days ago, before I even arrived at the base. Someone pulled them, copied them, put them back, leaving a trail that would lead directly to Donovan once anyone started looking. Who? Steele demanded. Harper's finger traced a line of code, stopped on an access key. Administrator-level clearance. Small pool of people with that kind of access. 5 total. Colonel Reeves, his executive officer, the base security chief, the IT director. She paused. And you, Captain Bradford. The room went very still. Bradford smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. That's a hell of an accusation, recruit. It's a statement of fact. You have the access, you have the knowledge, you have the opportunity, and you've been directing this investigation from the moment it started, making sure we looked everywhere except at you. Tanner's hand moved toward his sidearm. Donovan shifted position, blocking the door. Bradford's smile widened. You're good, better than your mother, maybe. She was all instinct and trigger pull. You actually think, but you're wrong, I'm not the mole. Prove it, Steele said. I don't have to, because in about 30 seconds, you're going to get a call that changes everything. As if on cue, the phone on the wall rang. Old-fashioned, hardwired, the kind that couldn't be hacked or intercepted. Steele picked it up. Steele. Colonel Reeves' voice, tight and urgent. Get to the detention facility. Now, we've got a situation. What kind of situation? The kind where our prisoner just started talking, and you need to hear what he has to say. The detention facility was a concrete box buried 50 feet underground, built during the Cold War to hold enemy combatants, updated with modern technology but still essentially a hole in the ground where dangerous men waited in the dark. They'd put the surviving attackers down here, the ones Harper hadn't killed, the ones who'd surrendered when they realized their assault had failed. 5 men, Chechen nationals, professional fighters with the kind of scars and dead eyes that came from a lifetime of war. Their leader sat in interrogation room 3, hands cuffed to a table bolted to the floor. He was 40-something, gray in his beard, a long scar running from his temple to his jaw. His name, according to the intel Bradford had pulled, was Armin Volkov, former Spetsnaz, current warlord, on 3 different international watch lists for crimes ranging from arms trafficking to ethnic cleansing. And he was smiling. Reeves stood behind the one-way glass, arms crossed. He's been asking for you specifically, Sergeant Major. Won't talk to anyone else. Why me? Says he has information about Phantom 1, about the operation that killed her. Says he was there. The words hit like a physical blow. Steele looked at Harper, saw her face go carefully blank, the way it did when she was feeling too much and showing nothing. I'm going in with you, she said. Negative. He knew my mother. I have a right to hear this. You have a right to nothing, recruit. You're an asset. Assets don't make demands. Fire flashed in her eyes again, but she stood down, stepped back, became that statue of ice and discipline. Steele entered the interrogation room alone. Volkov looked up, his smile widened. Sergeant Major Steele, I've heard much about you, the old warrior, the last of the true believers. You wanted to talk. Straight to business, Americans always in such hurry. Volkov's accent was thick, but his English was perfect. Very well, I tell you about Syria, about Operation Silent Knife, about the woman you call Phantom 1. You were there. I was hired to be there, by someone in your military, someone who wanted Elena Quinn dead and wanted it to look like combat casualty. Steele felt ice spread through his veins. Names. Names cost money, Sergeant Major. Information is commodity, very valuable commodity. You're facing life in federal prison. 20 counts of attempted murder of U.S. military personnel. Terrorism charges. You'll die in a cell, unless you cooperate. Volkov leaned back as far as the cuffs allowed. I am already dead, man. You think I fear American prison? I have survived Russian prisons, Chechen work camps, Syrian torture houses. Your country club detention centers are vacation by comparison. Then why talk at all? Because I am professional, I take contracts, I fulfill contracts, but I do not like being lied to, and your mole, he lied to me. About what? About the girl. He said she would be soft target, easy contract, get in, destroy base, get out, simple operation. Volkov's smile faded. Something like respect flickered in his dead eyes. But she was not soft target. She was Phantom, like her mother, maybe better. She destroyed my team, made us look like amateurs. This embarrasses me. This makes me angry, so I give you gift. I give you name of man who has been selling your secrets for 18 months. Steele leaned forward. Who? First, you bring the girl, the daughter. She deserves to hear truth about her mother's death. Then I tell you everything. Behind the glass, Harper's hands were shaking, barely visible, but Steele saw. He made a decision that would either save lives or end his career. He brought her in. She sat across from the man who'd been there when her mother died. Her face showed nothing, but Steele could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her breathing had changed, faster and shallower. Volkov studied her like a man studying a weapon. You have her eyes, but your face is different. Your father's face, perhaps. I never knew my father. Elena never spoke of him. Very private woman, Very professional, I respected her, even as I hunted her. Tell me how she died. Directly, good, no sentiment, very professional. Volkov shifted in his chair. Syria 2015, Aleppo, civilian evacuation operation. Your mother was providing overwatch. Standard mission. But someone in your command sold her position to us. Told us exactly where she would be. Exactly when. Promised payment if we eliminated her quietly. Why? Harper's voice was steady. Why did they want her dead? Because she had discovered something. Something about program called Phantom Protocol. Something that frightened powerful people. So they decided she must die. They paid me 50,000 American dollars. Very good money for single target. But you failed. Volkov's expression darkened. I did not fail. I put 3 rounds through the building she occupied. I watched it collapse. I confirmed the kill. But your mother, she survived initial collapse, long enough to make final transmission, long enough to tell someone about the betrayal. This complicated things. This made my employers very nervous. Who were they? Steele demanded. Volkov looked between them, calculating, weighing options. I tell you this and you give me deal. Reduced sentence, better facility, maybe even witness protection if things go badly. You don't get to negotiate. Then I say nothing, and your mole continues his work, continues getting Americans killed, continues selling secrets to highest bidder. How many more must die before you accept my terms? Reeves' voice came through the speaker in the ceiling. Give him the deal, Steele. We need the name. Steele wanted to refuse, wanted to make this smiling bastard pay for every crime he'd committed. But the colonel was right. They needed the name. Fine, you get the deal. Now talk. Volkov leaned forward as far as the cuffs would allow. The man who hired me. The man who sold Alina Quinn's position. The man who has been feeding intelligence to my network for 18 months. His name is Captain Nathan Cross. The name hit like a hammer blow. Cross, the weapons instructor, the man who'd served with Steele for 3 years, who'd trained half the operators currently deployed downrange, who'd earned a Silver Star in Iraq and a Bronze Star in Afghanistan. Cross, who Steele had trusted completely. You're lying, Steele said. Am I? Then explain why Captain Cross requisitioned secure communications equipment 3 days before each compromised operation. Explain why his bank account shows deposits from shell companies traced to Chechen networks. Explain why he is only instructor who knew about girl's arrival before she stepped off transport. Harper's voice, soft and deadly. Where is he now? Volkov smiled. If I was betting man, I would say he is running. The attack failed. His cover is compromised. Professional like Cross, he does not wait for arrest. He disappears. Probably already has exit strategy prepared. Steele was already moving, keyed his radio. All units locate Captain Nathan Cross. Detain on site. Consider him armed and extremely dangerous. Static, then a voice he didn't recognize. Sir, Cross checked out a vehicle 30 minutes ago. Said he was running a training exercise off base. Which direction? North toward the mountains. Harper stood. He's not running. He's going to finish the job. What job? She looked at Steele with eyes that had seen too much and understood more. There are 3 American prisoners being held at a Chechen black site in the mountains. POWs from operations that were compromised. Operations that Cross sold out. He's going to make sure they never talk. Make sure they never identify him. How do you know about prisoners? Because finding them was my primary mission, Sergeant Major. The attack on the base was secondary. A distraction. The real objective was always the POWs, and Cross knows I'm close to locating them, so he's going to eliminate the evidence before I can rescue them. Steele grabbed her shoulder. You know where they are. I've known since day 2. I was waiting for confirmation, for the right moment, for backup I could trust. She looked at him, at Tanner, at Donovan, at Bradford, who stood silent and watchful. Now I know who I can trust, so we go now, and we bring our people home. The mission brief took 15 minutes, just long enough for Harper to pull up satellite imagery and mark the location. An old logging camp 60 miles into the mountains, abandoned in the 70s, perfect for a black site, remote, defensible, off every map that mattered. 3 American POWs held there, their identities classified, their capture never acknowledged, ghost prisoners in a ghost war. But Harper knew their names. Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb, captured 18 months ago during a reconnaissance mission in Syria. Cross was his mission commander. She pulled up another photo. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Cole, captured 14 months ago providing security for a CIA operation. Cross signed off on her deployment orders. Third photo. Master Sergeant Cole Bennett, captured 8 years ago during Operation Silent Knife. He was my mother's spotter. The last name hung in the air like smoke. Steele understood now. This wasn't just about stopping Cross. This wasn't just about rescuing POWs. This was personal. How many hostiles at the site? Tanner asked. Satellite shows heat signatures for 8 to 10, but they're professionals. Chechen fighters loyal to Volkov's network. They know we're coming now that their boss is in custody. And Cross. Cross makes it 9 to 11. He's Delta trained. He knows our tactics, our equipment, our capabilities. Fighting him will be like fighting ourselves. Donovan checked his rifle. So we don't fight him, we outthink him. Bradford pulled up topographical maps. 3 approach vectors. North is most direct but completely exposed. East and west have tree cover but funnel us into kill zones. South is steep terrain but offers best concealment. South, Harper said immediately. Cross will expect us to use our training. Fast insertion, overwhelming force, north approach. We do the opposite, slow, careful. Use the terrain he thinks we won't. Steele looked at his team. 4 men who'd questioned everything, who'd been tested and found wanting, who'd learned the hard way that the 19-year-old girl they dismissed was the best operator any of them had ever seen. Load up, we leave in 10 minutes, full combat load. This is not a training exercise, this is not a simulation. This is real-world, hot zone, expect contact. And remember, we don't leave people behind, not anymore. They moved. The helicopter flight took 40 minutes, flying low through mountain passes, using terrain masking to avoid radar. The pilot was a warrant officer named Chen who'd flown combat missions in 3 wars and knew how to make a Black Hawk dance through spaces it shouldn't fit. Steele sat in the jump seat, watching the mountains slide past in the darkness. Beside him, Harper checked her rifle for the 3rd time. The .338 Lapua Magnum, custom built, the same weapon her mother had carried. "Where'd you get that rifle?" he asked. She didn't look up from her inspection. "It was hers, my mother's. General Hale saved it. Gave it to me on my 16th birthday. Said I'd earned the right to carry it." 16, that's when you went operational. That's when I made my first kill. Taliban commander in Afghanistan, high-value target, 800-meter shot in 40-knot winds. I was scared out of my mind. Thought I'd miss. Thought I'd fail her memory. But you didn't. But I didn't. She finally looked at him. "Sergeant Major, if something happens to me today, if I don't make it out, I need you to know something." "You're going to make it out." "Maybe, but in case I don't, in case Cross is better or luckier or I make a mistake, I need you to know that these 4 days being part of your team, even when you all hated me, even when I was lying about everything, it felt real. It felt like being a soldier instead of a weapon, and I want you to know I'm grateful for that." Steele reached over, put his hand on her shoulder, felt how thin she was, how young, how completely wrong it was that this girl had been shaped into what she'd become. "When this is over, you and I are going to have a long talk about what comes next, about whether you want to keep being a weapon, or whether you want to try being just Harper for a while." She smiled, sad and small and heartbreaking. "I don't know if I remember how to be just Harper." "Then we'll figure it out together." The helicopter settled into a clearing 3 miles from the target. They fast roped down into knee-deep snow. The cold hit like a wall, 20 degrees below zero, wind chill making it feel like 40 below. Perfect weather for ghosts. They moved through the forest in tactical column, Steele on point, Tanner and Donovan flanking, Bradford pulling rear security, Harper in the center moving like smoke, barely disturbing the snow. 2 miles in, she raised her fist. They froze. She pointed. Through the trees, barely visible, a trip wire. Standard perimeter security. But Harper's eyes had caught the slight discoloration in the snow, the too perfect straightness of a line that nature wouldn't make. Donovan moved forward, examined it, nodded, disarmed it with movements so careful they looked like prayer. They continued. 1 mile out, Harper stopped them again. This time she didn't point, just tilted her head slightly, listening. Steele heard it a moment later. Voices. Russian. 2 men on patrol, moving through the trees 100 meters west. Harper's hand signals were precise. Tanner and Bradford flank left. Donovan hold position. Steele with me. They moved like water through the forest. Soundless. Invisible. The patrol never knew they were there until it was too late. 2 suppressed shots, 2 bodies in the snow, clean, professional, necessary. Harper knelt beside one of them, searched his pockets, found a radio, a key card, a photograph of a woman and 2 children. She looked at the photo for a long moment, then put it back in his pocket, closed his eyes with gentle fingers. "I'm sorry," she whispered. They moved on. The logging camp appeared through the trees like a wound in the landscape. 5 buildings arranged in a rough square. The main lodge, 2 bunkhouses, a generator shed, a supply depot. The prisoners would be in the lodge, basement level, maximum security. Harper settled into an overwatch position on a small rise 300 meters out. Steele, Tanner, Donovan, and Bradford prepared for the assault. "I count 6 hostiles," Harper's voice came through their earpieces. 2 on the lodge roof, 1 at the generator, 3 inside, no sign of Cross yet. "Rules of engagement?" Tanner asked. Steele looked at the compound, thought about the 3 Americans down there. Webb, Cole, Bennett, men and women who'd been written off, forgotten, left to rot because acknowledging them meant acknowledging the missions that had failed. "Anyone who shoots at us, we shoot back. Anyone who surrenders, we take prisoner. Anyone who runs, we let them run. We're here for our people, not revenge." "Sergeant Major," Harper's voice. "Movement at the tree line, you're 9 o'clock, it's Cross." Steele turned, saw him. Captain Nathan Cross moving through the snow with the easy confidence of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. He carried a rifle, a sidearm, and something else. Explosives. "He's going to blow the lodge," Harper said. "Kill the prisoners and destroy the evidence. We've got maybe 5 minutes before he's in position." "Can you take him?" Silence on the radio, then quietly. "Yes, but it's an 800-meter shot, through wind and falling snow, and he's moving. Miss rate on a shot like that is 70%, even for me." "What if you don't miss?" "Then I kill a man I've never met, a traitor and a murderer, but still a man who once wore the flag, once swore the same oath we all did, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life." Steele understood what she was really asking. Permission not to shoot, but to carry the weight. "Take the shot, Harper. Bring our people home." He heard her exhale, slow and controlled. Target acquired. Wind 7 knots gusting to 12. Range 823 meters. Elevation change 42 feet. Temperature 19 degrees. Barometric pressure 29.8. She was talking herself through it, the way snipers did, turning the chaos of combat into mathematics, numbers instead of fear. Compensating for wind, adjusting for elevation, breathing steady, heart rate 62, finger on trigger, pressure increasing, 3 pounds, 4.5. Steele watched Cross through his own scope, saw the man moving with purpose, saw him check his watch, saw him pull something from his pack. "A detonator." "Harper," Steele said urgently. "I see it taking the shot now." The sound of her rifle was like thunder rolling through the mountains, the kind of sound that spoke of power and precision and finality. 823 meters away, Captain Nathan Cross stumbled, dropped the detonator, fell to his knees in the snow. The second shot took him in the chest before he could reach for it again. He fell forward, didn't move. "Target down," Harper's voice, steady, professional, empty. Steele and his team moved, fast and hard. They hit the compound like a hammer. The roof guards went down to Tanner's precision shooting. The generator guard tried to run and took a round through the leg from Donovan. The 3 inside surrendered when they realized they were surrounded. The basement door was locked, triple deadbolts, electronic keycard designed to keep people in. Bradford used the card they'd taken from the patrol. The locks clicked open. The smell hit first, unwashed bodies, human waste. Despair turned solid and given odor. 3 cells, 3 prisoners. Sergeant Webb was in the first, 40 pounds lighter than his service photo, beard down to his chest, eyes that had seen too much darkness for too long. He looked at them like they were hallucinations. "Real," his voice was cracked, broken. "Real," Steele confirmed. "You're going home, Sergeant." Staff Sergeant Cole was in the second cell. She'd kept herself together better, doing push-ups when they found her, staying strong, staying ready. She saluted when she saw them. "Took you long enough, Sergeant Major." "Sorry for the wait, Staff Sergeant. Let's get you out of here." The third cell held Master Sergeant Cole Bennett. He looked like a ghost of himself. 8 years in captivity had carved away everything except the core. But when he saw them, when he saw the patch on Steele's shoulder, he smiled. "Delta." "Yes, Sergeant." "About damn time." They carried the prisoners out, into the snow, into the cold, into freedom. Harper came down from her overwatch position, moved toward them with that economy of motion. Bennett saw her, went very still. "You have her eyes." Harper stopped. "You knew my mother." "I was her spotter, her partner, her friend." Tears were running down his face now. "I was there when she died. I heard her last words. She made me promise to tell you something if I ever got out, if I ever made it home." "What?" Bennett reached out with shaking hands, took Harper's face between them. She said, "Tell my daughter that she doesn't have to carry this. Tell her she can choose. Tell her the gun is a tool, not a chain. And tell her I love her, always." Harper's professional mask cracked, shattered, fell away completely. She collapsed against Bennett's chest and cried like the 19-year-old girl she'd never been allowed to be. The old soldier held her, stroked her hair, whispered things Steele couldn't hear and didn't need to. Around them, the team stood silent, bearing witness to something that transcended tactics and training and all the clinical language they used to describe killing. This was reunion. This was redemption. This was the moment when all the lies and all the death became worth it. Because they'd brought their people home. The extraction took 3 hours, getting the prisoners stable enough to move, destroying the evidence at the black site, securing the surrendered Chechen fighters for transport and trial. Cross's body they left where it fell. Reeves would send a team later, quietly, to collect what remained of a man who'd betrayed everything he'd sworn to protect. On the helicopter ride back, Steele sat across from Harper. She was asleep, head on Bennett's shoulder. The old sergeant had his arm around her, protecting her even in sleep. Bradford sat beside Steele. "That footage of Donovan, you planted it, didn't you?" The captain didn't deny it. "Had to test your assumptions, see if you'd jump to conclusions, see if you'd turn on each other at the first sign of doubt. You all passed, barely. You're a bastard." "I'm intelligence, it's the same thing." Bradford looked at Harper. "She's good, better than good. But she's also 19 and carrying weight no one should have to carry. What happens to her now?" "I don't know, that's above my pay grade." "Wrong answer, Sergeant Major. You're the one she trusts. You're the one she opened up to. What happens to her is exactly your pay grade." Steele was quiet for a long time. "Then I guess I better figure it out." They landed at Fort Bragg as the sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of gold and red that reminded everyone of fire and blood and the price of freedom. Medical teams took the prisoners. Debriefing teams took the Chechens. Reeves took the operational reports. And Steele took Harper to the one place on base that felt real. The chapel. They sat in the back pew, not praying, not talking, just sitting in the quiet while the world caught up with what they'd done. Finally, Harper spoke. "Volkov told me something else before we left, something he made me promise not to repeat." "What?" "He said Cross wasn't the top of the chain, said there were others, higher up, people who'd been running Phantom Protocol not to create operators but to create deniable assets, killers who could be aimed and fired and discarded without anyone asking questions." "Did he give you names?" "One, General Marcus Hale." The words hit like a gut punch. "Your foster father." "My handler, my trainer, the man who shaped me into this." She looked at her hands. "What if Volkov's right? What if everything I've done, everyone I've killed was just serving someone else's agenda? What if I'm not a soldier? What if I'm just a weapon?" Steele reached over, took one of those hands in his. "Listen to me, I've known weapons, I've carried them, I've used them, I've seen what they do. And you're not that, you're a soldier, a damn good one. Maybe the best I've ever seen, but more than that, you're a person, with choices, with agency, with the right to decide who you want to be. I don't know how to be anything else." "Then learn, starting now, starting here. You've spent 10 years being what other people made you. Maybe it's time to figure out who Harper Quinn is when nobody's giving her orders." She was quiet, then so softly he almost missed it. "I'm scared." "Good, fear means you're human, means you're real. means you get to choose what comes next. What if I choose wrong? Then you choose again. That's what being human is, making mistakes, learning, growing, becoming better than you were. The chapel door opened. Reeves entered, moved down the aisle with the bearing of a man carrying bad news. We need to talk. In Reeves' office, the same one where this had all started, they gathered. Steele, Harper, Tanner, Donovan, Bradford. The colonel looked tired, older than his 52 years. Volkov talked. A lot. We now have enough evidence to build cases against 17 individuals in various intelligence and special operations positions. People who have been using programs like Phantom Protocol to create off-books capabilities. Deniable operators. Child soldiers, essentially. Hale, Steele asked. General Hale has been taken into custody. He's cooperating, providing names, dates, details of operations going back 15 years. He says he started with good intentions, protecting the children of fallen operators, giving them purpose, skills, but it metastasized into something darker, something he couldn't control anymore. Harper's voice was very small. Did he know about my mother's death, about Cross? Reeves met her eyes. He suspected, but he didn't act on it, didn't investigate, didn't protect her, because doing so would have exposed the program, and the program mattered more than one operator's life. Even though that operator was his asset, his responsibility, his daughter. I'm sorry, Harper, I truly am. She stood, walked to the window, looked out at Fort Bragg, at the base that had tested her, broken her, revealed her. What happens now, to the program, to the other children? The program is shut down, effective immediately. The 47 other operatives we've identified are being located and offered support, therapy, education, a chance at normal lives if they want it. And if they don't, then they get to choose, same as you, same as everyone deserves. Harper turned back. I want to testify, at the congressional hearing, at the courts-martial, all of it. I want to tell them what it was like, what they did to us, so it never happens again. Reeves nodded. That's your right, and we'll support you. But Harper, you need to understand. Once you testify, your career as a covert operator is over. You'll be too exposed, too public. You'll have to find a new path. Good, I'm tired of being a ghost. Steele felt pride swell in his chest. This girl, this warrior, this ghost, was choosing humanity over utility, was choosing truth over convenience, was choosing to be Harper Quinn instead of Phantom 2. There's one more thing, Reeves said. He pulled out a file, set it on the desk. Your personnel record, the real one. Turns out your mother wasn't the only secret Hale kept. There's information here about your father, if you want to know. Harper stared at the file like it was a live grenade. Do I want to know? That's not my decision to make. She reached for it, stopped, looked at Steele. Whatever's in there, it doesn't change who I am, right? Right. She opened the file. Read, her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture, a weight lifting, or maybe settling more comfortably. Well, she said finally, that explains a lot. She closed the file, left it on the desk. I don't need to read the rest. Not yet, maybe someday, but not today. Outside, the base was returning to normal, training exercises resuming, morning formations assembling, the machine of military life grinding on. They walked together, the team, no longer suspicious, no longer divided, just 5 soldiers who'd been through hell and come out the other side changed. So what now? Tanner asked. We just go back to training recruits, pretend none of this happened. We remember it happened, Steele said. We learn from it. We become better instructors, better leaders, better men. And we make damn sure that the next time some 19-year-old shows up looking weak, we actually see them instead of what we assume about them. Donovan looked at Harper. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For the way we treated you, for the assumptions, for being blind. You weren't blind, you were human, and humans make mistakes. The question is whether we learn from them. They reached the training compound. A new group of recruits was forming up, fresh faces, eager, scared, ready to prove themselves. Harper watched them for a moment. I should go, paperwork to file, testimony to prepare, a whole new life to figure out. You'll do fine, Steele said. She smiled, real and warm and heartbreaking. Thank you, Sergeant Major, for seeing me, for trusting me, for teaching me that being a soldier is more than just following orders. You taught us more than we taught you. She started to walk away, stopped, turned back. Hey, Sergeant Major. Yeah. That congressional hearing, the one where you testify, can I sit in the gallery, watch you tell them what happened? You want to watch an old man get grilled by politicians. I want to watch a good man tell the truth. There's a difference. Then yeah, you can sit in the gallery. She saluted, he returned it. And Harper Quinn, no longer Phantom 2, no longer a ghost, no longer a weapon, walked away into her uncertain future with her head held high. Steele watched her go, felt something settle in his chest. Pride, maybe, or hope, or the simple satisfaction of knowing he'd been part of something that mattered. Bradford appeared at his shoulder. Think she'll be okay? I think she'll be more than okay. I think she'll be exactly who she chooses to be, and that's all any of us can ask for. They stood there as the sun climbed higher, as the recruits began their first exercise, as Fort Bragg prepared for another day of turning civilians into soldiers. Somewhere in the mountains, snow was covering the evidence of what they'd done, erasing the footprints, hiding the blood. But the truth remained. 3 Americans were home, a traitor was stopped, a program was shut down, and one 19-year-old girl had been given back the one thing she'd never had. A choice. The congressional hearing room waited. The questions would come. The investigation would continue. But for now, in this moment, standing in the cold North Carolina morning with his team around him, and the memory of Harper's smile still fresh, Jack Steele allowed himself to believe that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys won. The silence in the congressional hearing room stretched like wire pulled tight. Steele had been talking for 2 hours, telling them everything. The attack, the mole, the rescue, the truth about Phantom Protocol and the children who'd been turned into weapons before they were old enough to vote. The senators sat rigid in their high-backed chairs. Some looked horrified. Some looked angry. One, a veteran from Iowa with 3 tours in Vietnam, had tears running down his weathered face. Senator Patricia Cole, chair of the Armed Services Committee, leaned forward. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight that had nothing to do with volume. Sergeant Major Steele, let me make sure I understand. You're telling this committee that for 15 years, elements within our special operations community have been systematically recruiting orphaned children of fallen operators, training them from ages as young as 7, deploying them into combat zones before they reached adulthood, all without congressional oversight, without legal authority, without any of the safeguards we put in place specifically to prevent this kind of abuse. Yes, ma'am. And you're further testifying that this program, called Phantom Protocol, resulted in the deaths of at least 12 of these child operatives in combat operations that were never officially acknowledged. Yes, ma'am, 12 that we know of. The full scope is still being investigated. Senator Cole removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes, put them back on. How many children total were part of this program? 47 that we've identified. Could be more. The records were deliberately fragmentary, compartmentalized, designed so no one person knew the full extent. And these children, where are they now? Steele glanced toward the gallery, toward the row where Harper Quinn sat, wearing civilian clothes for the first time since he'd met her. Jeans and a sweater that made her look even younger than 19. She met his eyes, nodded slightly. Permission to continue. Most have been located, offered support, therapy, education, a chance to build lives outside the program. Some have accepted, others are still deciding. It's complicated, Senator. These kids don't know how to be anything except what they were made to be. Teaching them to be civilians again, teaching them to be human, that's going to take time, and resources, and a commitment from this body that we won't abandon them the way the program did. Senator Cole made a note. We'll address support structures in our recommendations, but I want to go back to the night of the attack on Fort Bragg. You testified that recruit Quinn, age 19, single-handedly neutralized 14 hostile combatants, prevented what could have been catastrophic casualties. Yet according to her training records, she'd failed every qualification test up to that point. She was undercover, ma'am, playing a role. Everything she did, every failure was deliberate, designed to make us underestimate her while she hunted for the mole in our unit. Captain Nathan Cross. Yes, ma'am. Who is now deceased, killed during the rescue operation for the 3 POWs. Yes, ma'am, he was attempting to destroy evidence, to eliminate witnesses. Recruit Quinn made the shot that stopped him. The senator's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. How far was that shot? 823 meters, through wind and snow, against a moving target who knew he was being hunted. And she made it on the first attempt. First shot disabled him, second was lethal. Sergeant Major, I've reviewed the ballistics report. I've consulted with experts. They tell me that shot under those conditions has a success probability of less than 30%, even for Olympic-level marksmen, even for our best military snipers. Yet a 19-year-old girl made it. Twice. Steele held her gaze. With respect, ma'am, Harper Quinn is not a girl. She's an operator, one of the best I've ever seen. The fact that she's 19 and female doesn't change her capability. It just changes our assumptions about what 19-year-old females can do. A murmur ran through the gallery. Someone started to applaud, caught themselves, went silent. Senator Cole allowed herself a small smile. Point taken, Sergeant Major. Let's talk about General Marcus Hale. The name fell like a stone into still water, ripples spreading outward. Steele had been dreading this part. Hale was in custody, cooperating, providing evidence against the others who'd corrupted Phantom Protocol. But he was also the man who'd raised Harper, who'd trained her, who'd been the closest thing to a father she'd ever known. General Hale was the architect of Phantom Protocol. He recruited the children, oversaw their training, deployed them on operations. He's provided extensive testimony about the program's scope and the individuals involved at various levels of command. Was he involved in the death of Captain Alina Quinn, Harper Quinn's mother? No, ma'am. Our investigation shows he tried to protect Captain Quinn, tried to stop the operation that killed her, but he lacked the authority to override the decision-makers above him. When she died, he took responsibility for her daughter, raised her, continued her training. Whether that was an act of protection or exploitation, I honestly don't know. What does Harper Quinn think? Steele looked at the gallery again. Harper sat perfectly still. Her face showed nothing. But he'd learned to read the small signs, the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the armrests. "You'd have to ask her, ma'am." "We will. She's scheduled to testify tomorrow. But I'm asking what you think, Sergeant Major. You've spent time with her, observed her, fought beside her. In your professional opinion, is she a victim of this program or a willing participant?" The question was a trap. Either answer could destroy Harper's credibility, could reduce her from operator to object, from soldier to sympathy case. Steele chose his words carefully. "I think she's both and neither, ma'am. She was 9 years old when her mother died, 9 years old when she was brought into this program. She didn't have the capacity to consent or refuse. That makes her a victim. But in the 10 years since, she's made choices, hard choices, to continue her training, to go operational, to hunt the people responsible for her mother's death. Those were her decisions, made with full knowledge of the consequences. That makes her an agent of her own fate." He paused, let the words settle. "What I know for certain is this. Harper Quinn saved lives. She stopped a terrorist attack. She rescued 3 American POWs who'd been written off as dead. She exposed corruption that went to the highest levels of our special operations community. And she did it all while enduring treatment from my team that I'm deeply ashamed of. We judged her, dismissed her, treated her like she was less than human because she didn't fit our preconceptions. And she could have broken us for that. Could have let us fail, could have watched us die. Instead, she saved us. Because that's who she is, that's who she chose to be." The silence that followed was different, heavier, charged with something that felt like recognition. Senator Cole nodded slowly. "Thank you, Sergeant Major. That's all the questions I have for now. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 0900 for Recruit Quinn's testimony. You're dismissed." Steele stood, saluted, walked down the aisle between rows of observers and journalists and military personnel who'd come to witness history. Harper was waiting in the hallway. She'd cut her hair shorter. It framed her face in a way that made her look older and younger at the same time, more herself somehow. "You did good in there," she said. "I told the truth, that's all. You defended me, even though you didn't have to." "Yeah, I did have to, because you're one of mine now, and I don't abandon my people." She smiled, real and warm and carrying a hint of the girl she might have been if the world had been kinder. "Walk with me." They left the Capitol building, walked through Washington in the weak winter sunlight, past monuments to men who'd fought wars and made peace and shaped the country into something worth defending. Harper stopped at the Vietnam Memorial, ran her fingers along the black granite wall, found a name, traced it with gentle reverence. "My mother used to bring me here when I was little, before she deployed the last time. She'd find the names of people she knew, friends who didn't come home. She'd tell me their stories, make sure I understood that every name was a person, someone who laughed and loved and mattered." Smart woman. She was complicated, damaged in ways I didn't understand until later, but smart and brave, and so committed to protecting people that she forgot to protect herself. Harper's hand dropped from the wall. "Hale told me something in his interview. Before they took him into custody, he said my mother knew about the program, knew what they were planning to do with me, and she was going to expose it. That's really why they killed her. Not because of Operation Silent Knife. Because she was going to blow the whistle on Phantom Protocol, and I was the evidence she was going to use." Steele felt cold that had nothing to do with the weather. Jesus kid. She was going to sacrifice her career, her reputation, everything, to save me from becoming what I became anyway, and they killed her before she could, made it look like combat, made it look heroic. when really it was just murder dressed up in patriotic language. You didn't become what they wanted. You became what you chose. There's a difference. Is there? Because when I close my eyes at night, I see the 47 people I've killed. I see their faces. I remember how it felt to pull the trigger. And I wonder if choosing to do it makes me better or worse than if someone had ordered me to. They walked in silence for a while, past the Lincoln Memorial, past the Korean War Veterans Memorial, past the ghosts of conflicts that had shaped the nation and broken the people who fought them. Finally, Steele spoke. You know what I think about when I can't sleep? I think about Fallujah, November 2004, house-to-house fighting, urban combat at its ugliest. I was 26 years old, thought I knew everything, thought I was invincible. Then I watched my best friend take a bullet meant for me, watched him die in my arms while I tried to hold his guts inside his body. He stopped, looked at Harper. His name was Marcus Webb. Same Marcus Webb we pulled out of that Chechen black site, except it's not. Different guy, same name. And every time I say it, I remember my friend dying. I remember the smell of his blood. The sound he made when he realized he wasn't going to make it. I carry that every day, every night. It's mine. It's part of me. And I had a choice after that. Let it destroy me or let it teach me. Which did you choose? Both. It destroyed the kid I was, the one who thought war was glorious, the one who believed good always triumphed. That kid died in Fallujah with my friend, but from the ashes I built something else, something harder, wiser, more careful with the lives placed in my hands. That's what trauma does, Harper. It destroys and it builds. The question is what you let it build. Harper nodded slowly. Tomorrow, when I testify, they're going to ask me about the kills, about whether I feel remorse, about whether I enjoyed it. How do I answer that? You tell the truth. You tell them that every death sits heavy, that you wish there'd been another way, but you also tell them that you'd do it again, because the alternative was letting Americans die, letting terrorists win, letting evil go unchallenged. You tell them you're not sorry for protecting people. You're just sorry it required killing to do it. And if they don't believe me, then fuck them. You don't need their belief. You need your own. You need to know in your bones that you did the right thing for the right reasons. The rest is just noise. They reached the Jefferson Memorial as the sun started its descent. The marble columns glowed golden. The statue of Jefferson looked out over the tidal basin with stone eyes that had seen decades of history unfold. Harper read the inscription carved into the wall, Jefferson's words about liberty and tyranny and the price of freedom. You think the founders ever imagined this? Child soldiers fighting secret wars, programs that treat people like weapons. I think they understood that power corrupts. That's why they built in checks and balances, oversight, accountability, the things Phantom Protocol deliberately bypassed. Tomorrow, when you testify, you're not just telling your story. You're activating those safeguards. You're making the system work the way it's supposed to. I'm scared. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes, means you're taking it seriously, means you're human. She turned to face him. The setting sun painted her in shades of amber and shadow. After this is over, after the testimony and the trials and all the noise, what happens to me? I can't go back to being an operator, too exposed, too public, and I don't know how to be anything else. Steele had been thinking about this question for days, had a conversation with Reeves, with some people in the Pentagon who owed him favors, with educators who specialized in helping veterans transition to civilian life. You've got options, full scholarship to any college that'll take you, and with your test scores, that's pretty much anywhere. GI Bill benefits even though you were never officially enlisted. Therapy, support groups, a trust fund set up by the families of the POWs you rescued. They wanted to do something, wanted to say thank you. You'll never have to worry about money. College. She said the word like it was foreign. Studying what? How to be normal. How to pretend I didn't spend my teenage years killing people in a dozen countries most Americans can't find on a map. You study whatever interests you. Psychology, maybe. You understand trauma better than most therapists. Could help other kids who have been through what you've been through, or political science. Use your experience to shape policy. Make sure Phantom Protocol never happens again. Or literature, art, music, anything that feeds your soul instead of just your skill set. And the nightmares, the hypervigilance, the fact that I can't walk into a room without identifying exits and threats and calculating kill ranges. Those fade, with time, with help, with distance from the life. You'll always be a warrior, Harper. That's in your bones, your blood, your mother's legacy. But you get to choose what kind of warrior. One who fights wars or one who prevents them. One who kills or one who heals. One who hides in shadows or one who stands in light. She was quiet for a long time, watching the sun paint the sky in colors that reminded them both of burning buildings and muzzle flashes and all the violence they'd seen. I want to stand in light, she said finally. I'm tired of being a ghost. Then tomorrow you tell them everything. You stand in that hearing room and you speak truth to power and you let them see who you really are. Not Phantom 2, not a weapon, not a victim, just Harper Quinn, 19 years old, survivor, warrior, witness. Human being who deserves better than she got but made something meaningful from it anyway. She looked at him with eyes that held too much knowledge for 19 years. Will you be there, in the gallery, like I was for you? Front row, wouldn't miss it. That night, Steele couldn't sleep. He sat in his hotel room overlooking the Potomac River, watching lights reflect on black water, thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. Harper's testimony would destroy careers, end friendships, expose secrets that powerful people had spent years burying. There would be pushback, threats, attempts to discredit her, to paint her as unstable, unreliable, a damaged child playing at being a soldier. His phone rang, Bradford's name on the screen. You should be asleep, Steele said. So should you, but we're both too old and too broken to sleep easy anymore. What's on your mind, Captain? I've been going through more files, declassified documents from Phantom Protocol. There's something you need to know before tomorrow. Steele felt his gut tighten. Tell me. Harper's father, the classified information in her file. I know who he is. Hale said it was redacted, said the information was above his clearance. Hale lied, he knew, he's always known. Harper's father is Senator Richard Carver, Armed Services Committee, 30-year career, 3-star general before he retired and ran for office. He's one of the senators who will be questioning Harper tomorrow. The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. Are you sure? DNA records don't lie. Carver had an affair with Alina Quinn during a joint training operation in 1995. She got pregnant, never told him, raised Harper alone. Carver never knew he had a daughter, still doesn't know, unless someone tells him. Jesus Christ, does Harper know? The file was in her personnel record, the one Reeves showed her. If she read it, she knows. If she didn't, she's going to walk into that hearing room tomorrow and testify in front of her biological father without either of them realizing it. Steele stood, paced. His knee protested, but he ignored it. We have to tell her. Do we? Think about it. Carver's a good man, fair, honest. One of the few politicians in this city who actually gives a damn about the troops, but he's also ambitious, conservative, built his career on family values and traditional military structure. Having an illegitimate daughter who's a child soldier, that destroys him, ends his career, maybe his marriage, definitely his credibility. That's his problem. Harper deserves to know. Does she? She's got enough weight to carry. Adding daddy issues to the mix, right before the most important testimony of her life, that's not kindness. That's cruelty. Steele stopped pacing, looked out at the dark river. What do you think we should do? I think we let her testify, let her tell her truth, and after, when the dust settles, we give her the information and let her decide what to do with it. Her choice, her timeline, her control. It was the right answer, the only answer, but it still felt like another lie in a story built on too many lies already. Okay, we do it your way. But Bradford, if this blows up in our faces, if she finds out we knew and didn't tell her, she'll never trust us again. Then we better hope we're making the right call. They hung up. Steele went back to watching the river, thinking about fathers and daughters, about secrets and choices, about the weight of information and the burden of silence. Somewhere across the city, Harper Quinn was probably lying awake too, preparing her testimony, rehearsing her answers, steeling herself to face the people who'd let Phantom Protocol happen. One of whom was her father. And she had no idea. The hearing room was packed, every seat filled, journalists with cameras and notebooks, military brass in dress uniforms, veterans groups, child advocacy organizations, people who'd spent careers fighting for transparency in special operations. Harper entered at 0900 precisely. She wore a simple gray suit, no makeup, hair pulled back. She looked professional and young and terrifyingly composed. She took her seat at the witness table, raised her right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Senator Cole nodded. Please state your name for the record. Harper Marie Quinn. Age 19. Current occupation unemployed, former covert operative under Phantom Protocol. A murmur ran through the room. Cole let it settle before continuing. Miss Quinn, thank you for appearing before this committee. I know this is difficult. I want you to know that you're in a safe space. No one here will judge you. We're simply seeking truth, understanding, a way forward that prevents what happened to you from happening to others. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Then let's begin. Tell us about your childhood, before Phantom Protocol, before your mother died. What do you remember about being a normal little girl? Harper's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Memory, maybe, or loss. I remember my mother teaching me to shoot. I was 6 years old. She had this .22 rifle, small enough for a child to handle. We'd go to the range together. She'd show me proper breathing, sight alignment, trigger control. Made it a game. See who could get closest to the center. I thought it was fun. Didn't understand she was training me. Did that concern you, being taught to shoot so young? No, ma'am. Lots of military kids grow up around weapons, learn gun safety, basic marksmanship. It didn't seem unusual, not until later. Not until I understood she wasn't just teaching me to shoot. She was preparing me for what was coming. She knew you'd be recruited into Phantom Protocol. She knew it was possible. She'd been part of the program herself in a way. One of the first female snipers to see combat, to prove women could do the job as well as men. Better in some cases. She knew that if something happened to her, if she died in the line of duty, people would look at me, wonder if I had her gifts, her talents. And she wanted me ready, wanted me to have the skills to survive if they came calling. Senator Carver leaned forward. Steele watched from the gallery, knowing what Harper didn't, seeing the resemblance now that he was looking for it. The same green eyes, the same sharp cheekbones, the same way of holding perfectly still when thinking. "Miss Quinn," Carver said, his voice gentle, "I knew your mother not well. We crossed paths at a training exercise in 1995. She was exceptional, dedicated, one of the finest soldiers I ever met. I was deeply saddened to learn of her death, and I'm sorry for your loss." Harper met his eyes, father and daughter strangers to each other. "Thank you, Senator." She spoke highly of the officers she trained with, said they treated her with respect, judged her on her performance, not her gender. That meant a lot to her. "I'm glad to hear that. Now, I want to ask you about the night of the attack on Fort Bragg. You were on watch duty when you first spotted the hostile forces, correct?" "Yes, sir." "And you reported it to your chain of command?" "Yes, sir, I called it in immediately. Multiple contacts, tactical spacing, professional movement, all indicators of a prepared assault." "But your report was dismissed." "Yes, sir. Lieutenant Tanner told me I was seeing things, told me to stay off the radio unless it was a real emergency." "How did that make you feel?" Harper paused, considered the question. "Frustrated but not surprised. I'd spent 4 days being dismissed, being told I was incompetent, being treated like I didn't belong. One more dismissal was just par for the course. Yet you stayed on post, continued to observe, continued to prepare for a threat your superiors said didn't exist. Why?" "Because I knew what I saw, Senator. And I knew that if I was right, if those contacts were real, Americans would die if someone didn't act. So I prepared, positioned my rifle, calculated ranges, identified firing solutions, made sure that when the attack came, I'd be ready. Even though doing so meant disobeying a direct order to stay off the radio." "I didn't disobey, sir. I stayed off the radio. I just didn't stay idle." A ripple of laughter ran through the gallery. Even Carver smiled. "Walk us through the attack. What happened when the first explosion hit?" Harper's voice became clinical, detached, the way operators talked about combat when they needed to create distance from the trauma. "The fuel depot went up at 02:36. Secondary explosions at the armory and motor pool. Classic multi-point assault designed to create chaos and disable response capabilities. I counted at least 18 hostiles breaching the perimeter from 3 different vectors. Professional coordination, military discipline. These weren't insurgents or terrorists. These were soldiers." "And you engaged them?" "I provided fire support, eliminated immediate threats to friendly forces, created standoff distance that allowed our people to organize a defense." "You killed 14 men that night." The word "killed" hung in the air like smoke. "Yes, sir, 14 confirmed." "Any regrets?" This was the moment. The question Steele had told her to expect, the one that could define her as either monster or hero. Harper looked directly at Senator Carver, at the father she didn't know she had. "I regret that it was necessary, sir. I regret that 14 men died. I regret that they made choices that put them in opposition to my country. I regret that they had families who loved them and will never see them again. I regret all of it." She paused, took a breath. "But I don't regret pulling the trigger, because the alternative was letting them kill Americans, letting them destroy a military installation, letting them succeed in an act of terror, and I wasn't willing to accept that alternative, so I made a choice, their lives or ours, and I chose ours, every time, without hesitation." The room was silent. You could hear breathing, the scratch of pens on paper, the soft whir of cameras. Carver nodded slowly. "Thank you for your honesty, Miss Quinn. One final question: if you could go back, if you could choose a different path, would you?" Harper was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried weight that seemed too heavy for 19 years. I can't go back, Senator. None of us can. The past is fixed, unchangeable. All we have is forward. And moving forward, I choose to believe that what I did, what I survived, what I became, all of it can serve a purpose, can mean something beyond just violence and death. I choose to believe that telling this truth, exposing this program, making sure it never happens again to other children, that's worth the cost. That's redemption for the blood on my hands. She looked at each senator in turn. I was 9 years old when they took my childhood, 15 when I made my first kill, 19 now, sitting here, trying to explain to you how it feels to be a weapon who learned too late that she was supposed to be a person. I can't give you back the innocence I never had. Can't undo the operations I ran or the people I killed or the lies I told. But I can give you truth. I can give you testimony. I can give you the ammunition you need to make sure no other child goes through what I went through. She leaned forward. So please, use it, pass laws, create oversight, build safeguards. Make it so that the next time some general decides that orphan children would make good weapons, someone says no. Someone stops it. Someone chooses humanity over utility. That's all I'm asking. That's all I want. Just make it mean something. Make my mother's death and my stolen childhood and all the pain mean something. Senator Cole's voice was thick when she spoke. It will, Miss Quinn. I promise you it will. This committee will draft legislation within 30 days. The Phantom Protocol Prevention Act, named for your mother, Captain Alina Quinn, who tried to stop this and died for it, and named for you, Harper Quinn, who survived it and had the courage to expose it. Your testimony today will save lives, will protect children, will make our military stronger and more accountable. I give you my word. Harper nodded. A single tear tracked down her face. She didn't wipe it away. The hearing continued for another 3 hours. Technical questions, legal questions, details about operations and oversight and the chain of command failures that let Phantom Protocol exist. But the moment that mattered had already happened. The moment when a 19-year-old girl looked her father in the eye without knowing who he was and told him the truth about what his world had done to her. Afterward in the hallway, Steele found her standing by a window, looking out at the city, at the monuments and the river and the promise of a country that was supposed to be better than this. "You did it," he said. "Did I? Feels like I just told a story, just words, just memory. How does that change anything?" Words matter. Truth matters. You planted a seed today. Something that'll grow into laws and policies and protections. Something that'll make sure no other Harper Quinn has to stand where you stood and say what you said. She turned to face him. Senator Carver, he was kind, asked good questions, really seemed to care. Steele's throat tightened. This was the moment, the choice. Tell her or don't. Give her this information or protect her from it. He made his decision. He's a good man, one of the best in this broken city. You made an impression on him, I could see it. Not a lie, not quite, but not the whole truth either. Harper would learn about her father, eventually, when she was ready, when she'd had time to process the testimony and the trauma and the weight of what she'd done today. But not now, not yet. "Come on," Steele said. "Let's get out of here. I know a place that makes the best burgers in D.C., completely unpretentious. No politics, no cameras, just good food and cold beer and a chance to remember what normal feels like." She smiled, tired but genuine. "I'd like that." They walked out of the Capitol building together, into the winter sunlight, into a world that was slowly, painfully, starting to change because one girl had the courage to tell the truth. Behind them, Senator Carver watched from his office window, watched Harper Quinn walk away, felt something stir in his chest, some instinct he couldn't name. His chief of staff appeared at his shoulder. "Sir, there's something you should see, about the Quinn girl, about her file." Carver turned. "What about it?" The chief of staff handed him a folder, classified, eyes only. Carver opened it, went very still. "This can't be right." "DNA doesn't lie, sir. Harper Quinn is your daughter, from your relationship with Alina Quinn in 1995. You never knew because Alina never told you. Raised the child alone. And when Alina died, General Hale took custody. Continued the training. Turned your daughter into a weapon without you ever knowing she existed." Carver sank into his chair, looked at the photograph clipped to the file. Harper at 9 years old, the same age as his legitimate daughter, the same green eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. "My God!" "Sir, this stays classified. Revealing it would destroy your career, your family, your legacy. The fewer people who know, the better." "She doesn't know." "We believe not. The information was in her file but heavily redacted. Unless someone told her directly, she testified today in front of her biological father without realizing it." Carver looked out the window again. Harper was gone, disappeared into the city, into her future. His daughter, the child he never knew, the warrior who'd been forged in fire and blood and secrets. "Find her," he said quietly. "Sir." "Find Harper Quinn, arrange a meeting, private, unofficial. I want to talk to her, want to know her, and I want to tell her the truth. She deserves that much. After everything, she deserves to know she has a father, even if that father failed her, even if I can never make up for 19 years of absence." "The political risk, sir." "Damn the political risk. She's my daughter, and I've been voting on military policy, defense appropriations, special operations oversight for 15 years without knowing I had a child in the field. A child fighting wars I helped authorize. A child being used by programs I should have been preventing. That ends now." Carver closed the file, made his decision. "And when we meet, I'm going to tell her I'm sorry. Sorry I wasn't there. Sorry I didn't protect her. Sorry the system failed her so completely. It won't fix anything, won't give her back what she lost. But it's a start. It's something. And right now, something is all I have to offer." The burger joint was called Old Glory, tucked into a side street in Georgetown, the kind of place where veterans gathered and civilians felt like intruders. Steele had been coming here for 20 years, since before the wars, since before everything changed. They sat in a corner booth. Harper demolished a bacon cheeseburger with the appetite of someone who'd been running on adrenaline and coffee for days. Steele nursed a beer and watched her discover the simple pleasure of not having to be anything except hungry. "This is really good," she said around a mouthful. "Best in the city, owner's a former Marine. Fallujah veteran, makes everything from scratch. No corporate chains, no frozen patties, just honest food made by honest hands." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. The restaurant hummed with conversation, the clink of glasses, the occasional burst of laughter, normal sounds, human sounds. Harper finished her burger, leaned back, looked at Steele with eyes that held questions she wasn't quite ready to ask. "What happens now, after the hearings, after the trials? What's the end game here?" "The end game is you get to choose. College, career, life. Whatever you want, whatever feeds your soul, the military will support you. So will I, so will everyone who knows what you did and why it mattered. And the nightmares, the hypervigilance, the fact that I just calculated 17 different ways to kill everyone in this restaurant if they turned hostile." Steele smiled sadly. "Those fade, never completely, but they fade. and you learn to live with them, learn to channel them into something productive. I teach, pass on knowledge. Make sure the next generation doesn't make the mistakes I made. You'll find your version of that, your way of turning trauma into purpose. You really believe that? I've seen it happen, watched broken warriors become teachers, therapists, artists, politicians, people who took the worst parts of themselves and alchemized them into something that helps others. You're stronger than you know, Harper, smarter, more resilient. You'll figure it out. She was quiet for a moment, then almost too soft to hear. I'm scared. Of what? Of being normal, of not having a mission, of waking up every day and not knowing what I'm supposed to be doing or why I'm doing it. Being a ghost was terrible, but at least I knew my purpose, knew my role. Now I'm just adrift, and I don't know how to navigate that. Steele reached across the table, put his weathered hand over her young one. You navigate it one day at a time, one choice at a time. You wake up tomorrow and you decide what kind of person you want to be, and then you make choices that align with that person. Some days you'll get it right, some days you'll fail, but you keep choosing, keep trying, keep becoming. That's what being human is. That's what freedom means. And if I fail, if I can't do it, if I'm too broken, then you get back up and try again. And if you can't do it alone, you ask for help from me, from Bradford and Tanner and Donovan, from the therapists and the support groups and the other survivors. You're not alone in this, kid. You've got people, you've got family. Maybe not the one you were born into, but the one you earned, the one you chose, and we don't abandon our own. Tears were running down her face now, silent, unashamed. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me, for believing in me, for treating me like I was worth saving. Harper, you were always worth saving. You just needed someone to tell you that. They sat there as the afternoon faded to evening, as the restaurant filled with the dinner crowd, as the world outside continued its indifferent turning. And Harper Quinn, no longer Phantom 2, no longer a ghost, no longer a weapon, took the first small steps toward becoming just Harper. Whoever that turned out to be. 6 months later, Steele stood on the campus of Georgetown University. The spring semester was ending. Students poured out of buildings with the particular energy of people freed from responsibility for a few months. He found her in the library, studying, books spread across a table, her hair longer now, her face less haunted. She wore jeans and a Georgetown sweatshirt and looked like any other 19-year-old college student. Except for the eyes. The eyes still held depths most 19-year-olds never reached. She looked up, smiled, waved him over. Sergeant Major, what brings you to campus? Graduation ceremony tomorrow. They're giving honorary degrees to the 3 POWs we rescued. Webb, Cole, Bennett, thought you'd want to be there. I'll be there, wouldn't miss it. How's the semester going? She gestured at the books, psychology text, trauma studies, PTSD research. It's good, hard. Sometimes I read case studies and I see myself in them, see the patterns I developed, the coping mechanisms, the way childhood trauma shapes adult behavior. It's like looking in a mirror that shows you things you didn't know were there. That's good, right? Understanding yourself. It's terrifying, but yeah, good. My professor wants me to co-author a paper about the long-term effects of military training on adolescent brain development, using my experiences as a case study. You going to do it? I think so, if I can help other kids, if I can contribute to the research that maybe prevents this from happening again, then yeah, I'll do it. Steele sat down, looked at this young woman who'd been through hell and come out the other side still fighting, still hoping, still choosing humanity. I'm proud of you, kid. Your mother would be too. Harper's smile was sad but genuine. I hope so. I talk to her sometimes, to her grave, tell her about my life, my classes, the things I'm learning. It helps, makes me feel less alone. You're not alone, you know that, right? I do now, took a while, but I do. She closed her textbook, looked at him with those green eyes that had seen too much. There's something I need to tell you, something I found out last week. Steele's gut tightened. He knew what was coming, had known it would come eventually. Senator Carver reached out, asked to meet. Private, off the record. I almost said no, but something made me curious, so I went. What did he say? He told me he's my father, showed me the DNA records, explained about his relationship with my mother, how he never knew about me, how he would have been there if he'd known, how sorry he is for every day he missed, every birthday, every nightmare, every moment I needed a father and didn't have one. How do you feel about that? Harper was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, it's complicated. Part of me wants to be angry, wants to blame him for not knowing, not looking, not caring enough to find out if his relationship with my mother had consequences. But the rational part of me understands. My mother made a choice to keep me secret, to raise me alone, to protect him from the complications. That wasn't his fault. Are you going to have a relationship with him? We're going to try, slowly, carefully, no expectations. Just two strangers who happen to share DNA trying to figure out if they can be family. It's awkward and painful, and sometimes I wonder why I'm doing it. But then I remember that I spent 10 years being a ghost. Maybe it's time to be a daughter for a while. See what that feels like. Steele reached over, squeezed her shoulder. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Family's complicated, messy, imperfect, but it's also the thing that makes us human. The thing that reminds us we're more than our missions or our skills or our scars. We're people, connected, mattering to each other. Thank you for everything, for believing in me when I gave you every reason not to, for fighting beside me, for being the father figure I needed when I didn't have one. I know I'm supposed to be building a relationship with Senator Carver, but you'll always be the man who saw me, who saved me, who showed me what it means to choose humanity over utility. Harper, you saved yourself. You made the choices. You did the work. I just provided air support. She laughed, real and bright and carrying a hint of the joy she'd been denied for too long. Air support, I like that. Makes you sound like a guardian angel. More like a grumpy old sergeant who got lucky enough to meet an exceptional young woman who reminded him why we do this job, why we serve, why we sacrifice. Because sometimes we protect people who become better than we ever were, who take the lessons we learned and use them to build something we never imagined. They sat in the library as afternoon faded to evening, as students came and went, as the world continued its turning. And Jack Steele looked at Harper Quinn, survivor, warrior, student, daughter, human being, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hoping. Not the shallow kind, not the naive belief that everything would be perfect, but the deep, bone-certain knowledge that the next generation, represented by this remarkable young woman, would be better than his, wiser, kinder, more willing to question and challenge and demand better from the systems that shaped them. She'd paid the price, carried the scars, survived the darkness. And now she was building light. That was enough. That was everything. The graduation ceremony took place on a perfect spring morning. Blue sky, warm sun, the kind of day that makes you believe in new beginnings. Harper sat with the other students, wearing her cap and gown, looking young and hopeful and finally at peace. Steele watched from the family section, Beside him sat Tanner, Donovan, and Bradford, the team, the brothers who'd learned humility from a 19-year-old girl. On the other side sat Senator Carver and his wife. They'd come separately, made excuses about work schedules, but they'd come, because Harper had asked them to. Family, complicated and messy and imperfect, but family nonetheless. The POWs received their honorary degrees first. Webb, Cole, Bennett, each of them stood when their names were called. Each of them received standing ovations. Each of them looked at Harper and nodded. Acknowledgement, gratitude, recognition that she'd given them back their lives. Then the student awards, academic achievements, leadership honors, service recognition. And finally, a special commendation, created just for this occasion. Harper Marie Quinn. She stood, walked to the stage, accepted the certificate with hands that didn't shake. The dean read the citation. For extraordinary courage in the face of adversity, for service to country beyond the call of duty, for the moral strength to speak truth to power and demand accountability from those who failed in their obligations, for reminding us that heroes come in unexpected packages, and for showing us that the measure of a person is not what they survive, but what they choose to become afterward. We honor you, we thank you, and we commit to being worthy of your sacrifice. The audience erupted, standing ovation, cheers, applause that seemed to shake the very air. Harper stood on that stage, looking out at the sea of faces, at Steele and the team, at Carver and his family, at Bennett and the other POWs, at her classmates and professors and all the people who'd helped her build this new life. And for the first time in 10 years, she didn't calculate exits, didn't identify threats, didn't measure firing distances. She just stood there, present, human, free. And smiled. Later at the reception, Steele found her surrounded by well-wishers. She caught his eye, excused herself, came over. "Thank you for coming. Wouldn't have missed it for the world." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the party, the celebration of endings and beginnings. "What's next for you?" Steele asked. "Graduate school. Stanford has a program in trauma psychology. I got accepted. Full scholarship. I'm going to study how we help veterans transition, how we treat PTSD, how we make sure no one falls through the cracks the way so many did." "That's good, important work. What about you? Still training recruits?" "For now, but I'm thinking about retirement. Maybe teach at the War College. Pass on lessons to the next generation of leaders. Make sure they understand that the people under their command are humans first, soldiers second. That the measure of leadership is how you treat the ones who can't fight back." Harper nodded. "You taught me that. In the way you apologized. In the way you fought beside me. In the way you chose to see me as a person when it would have been easier to keep seeing me as a weapon. That lesson, more than any other, is what saved me. What gave me permission to be human again." "You were always human, Harper. You just needed someone to remind you." She hugged him, sudden and fierce. Steele returned it, felt the weight of 10 years of secrets and lies and violence finally beginning to lift. When they separated, her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "Take care of yourself, Sergeant Major." "You too, kid. And remember, you've got my number, day or night. You ever need anything, you call Deal." "Deal." She walked back to the party, back to her classmates and her professors and Senator Carver, who was trying so hard to be a father to this stranger who was his daughter. Steele watched her go, felt the bittersweet ache of a mission completed, a story told, a chapter closed. Bradford appeared at his shoulder. "You did good, old man." "We all did, she just gave us the chance." "What do you think she'll become, 5 years from now, 10. When she's had time to process and heal and build. Steele thought about the girl he'd met 7 months ago, broken and angry and hiding behind professional competence, about the woman she'd become, whole and human and choosing light over darkness. I think she'll be extraordinary. I think she'll change the way we treat trauma, the way we train soldiers, the way we think about sacrifice and service and what we owe the people who protect us. I think she'll be the kind of leader I always wished I could be, the kind who sees people first, mission second, who remembers that every statistic is a person, every casualty is someone's daughter. You taught her that. No, she knew it all along. We just stopped preventing her from being it. They stood there as the sun set over Georgetown, as another generation celebrated their graduation and stepped into uncertain futures, as the world continued its eternal turning. And Jack Steele, 60 years old and tired and carrying 32 years of war in his bones, allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd gotten this one right. One girl saved, one truth told, one system changed. Not much, not enough, but something. And sometimes, something was all you could hope for. Sometimes, something was everything. Brothers, let me ask you something that's been weighing on me since researching this story. Sergeant Major Steele spent 32 years in Delta Force, seen combat in 3 wars, trained hundreds of operators, and it took a 19-year-old girl he dismissed as dead weight to teach him the most important lesson of his career. How many times have we done that? Judged someone by what they looked like instead of what they could do. Harper Quinn made an 800-meter kill shot through a blizzard, 14 hostiles down in 12 minutes, but the real weapon wasn't the rifle, it was patience. She let them underestimate her until the moment it mattered most. That's the kind of tactical thinking they don't teach in any manual. What about you? Ever misjudged someone and paid the price, or been the underdog who proved them all wrong? Drop your story below. And if this one earned your respect, hit subscribe. More untold military truths coming every week.